I'm Peggy, 32 years old, and I once believed family meant unconditional love until last Christmas dinner changed everything. Sitting at the kids' table while my parents toasted my sister as their only daughter broke something inside me. Being invisible in your own family leaves scars deeper than anyone can imagine. That night, I finally found my voice, after decades of silence, unleashing a truth so powerful it shattered our family's perfect facade forever. What happened next shocked even me. If you're watching from somewhere where family gatherings make you anxious, let me know in the comments and subscribe to join others who understand what it's like to feel invisible at your own dinner table. Growing up in Lexington, Massachusetts, we were the picture-perfect American family, at least from the outside. My father, Thomas, worked as a successful cardiology surgeon at Boston Medical Center, and my mother, Diana, was a well-respected elementary school principal. Our colonial-style home, with its perfectly manicured lawn and white picket fence, was featured twice in the local Home and Garden magazine. We had the right cars, took the right vacations, and wore the right clothes. And at the center of this perfect family portrait stood my sister Abigail, Abby for short, 3 years older and infinitely more valuable than me. From my earliest memories, I knew my place in the family hierarchy. Abby was the golden child and I was the afterthought. It wasn't something they said outright. My parents were too proper for that. But it was evident in every interaction, every decision, every family moment. Our living room walls told the story clearly. Abby's academic certificates, swimming medals, and piano recital photos lined the main wall arranged meticulously in custom frames. My few achievements, like winning the state science fair in 10th grade, were relegated to a drawer in the study, or occasionally the refrigerator for a week before disappearing forever. When I asked my mother once where my debate team photo went, she looked genuinely confused before saying, "Oh, I think we ran out of wall space, honey." Parent-teacher conferences were particularly revealing. For Abby, my parents blocked off entire evenings, eagerly soaking in every word of praise from her teachers. "Abby is exceptional," they'd say, and my parents would nod knowingly. For me, these meetings were brief affairs. "Peggy is doing fine" was usually sufficient. Once my English teacher tried telling my parents about my writing talent, suggesting I could pursue journalism. My father checked his watch 3 times during the 5-minute conversation. The disparity in how our parents treated us extended to every aspect of life. On Christmas mornings, Abby received thoughtful, expensive gifts, a handcrafted dollhouse when she was 8, a premium laptop for high school graduation, and in college, a brand new car with a giant red bow. My presents were practical afterthoughts, school supplies, clothing items I needed anyway, or generic gift cards with apologies that we weren't sure what you'd want, Peggy. Family photos became exercises in emotional endurance. In most pictures, I was positioned at the edge, easily croppable. During one vacation to the Grand Canyon, my father handed me the camera, saying, "Why don't you take this one, Peggy?" I took over 20 photos of my smiling family before a kind stranger offered to take one with me in it. That photo never made it to any album. Despite all this, I kept trying. I graduated with honors, joined extracurricular activities, and even chose a career path, marketing, that I thought would impress them. Nothing worked. Abby's standard achievements outshone my exceptional ones by virtue of being hers. When I landed my first marketing job at a prestigious firm in Seattle, my mother's response was, "That's nice, dear. Did you hear Abby might be getting promoted to senior accountant?" The strange part was Abby herself. She wasn't overtly cruel. In fact, she occasionally showed moments of genuine sisterly affection. She'd compliment my outfit or ask about my job with what seemed like real interest. But beneath that veneer lay a subtle smugness, a comfort in her position as the favorite that she never challenged. She'd say things like, "Mom and Dad are just old-fashioned, they don't understand your choices," like I do, positioning herself as both superior to me and more understanding than our parents, the perfect middle ground. I left home for college and never really came back, building my life 3,000 miles away in Seattle. Phone calls became less frequent, visits rarer. I'd made it home for Christmas only twice in the past decade. But this year was different. My therapist, Dr. Sarah, had been encouraging me to face my family dynamics directly rather than avoiding them. "Family patterns don't change if you don't confront them," she told me. "Your absence only reinforces your role as the outsider." So when my mother called in November with a Christmas invitation that sounded almost warm, I decided to accept. Maybe things had changed. Maybe the distance had made them appreciate me more. Maybe, just maybe, this Christmas would be different. I spent weeks preparing. I found thoughtful gifts for everyone. A rare first edition medical text for my father, artisan jewelry for my mother, personalized items for Abby, her husband James, and their 2 children. I spent far too much on a new outfit, had my hair professionally styled, and even rehearsed stories about my recent promotion to marketing director. This time, I promised myself they would see me. This time, I would matter. Little did I know that this Christmas dinner wouldn't just be another disappointment. It would be the breaking point that changed everything. The flight from Seattle to Boston took 6 hours, but the emotional journey stretched back decades. As the plane descended through thick December clouds, I rehearsed conversations in my head, calm, measured responses to potential criticisms about my weight, my single status, my career choices. I practiced the art of selective sharing, mentioning enough about my success to show I was doing well, but not so much that I'd be accused of bragging or making Abby feel inadequate. I had rented a car at the airport, wanting the independence to leave if things became unbearable. Driving through the familiar streets of Lexington, past snow-covered colonial houses decorated with Christmas lights and wreaths, I felt a mixture of nostalgia and dread. When I turned onto Maple Avenue and saw my childhood home, my stomach tightened. The house looked exactly the same, imposing, perfect, and somehow cold, despite the warm glow from the windows. My mother answered the door, her critical gaze sweeping over me before her lips curved into what passed for her welcome smile. "Peggy, you made it. My goodness, you look different." She leaned in for an air kiss that barely made contact. "Come in before all the heat escapes." I had arrived with arms full, luggage, and carefully wrapped presents that had cost nearly $2,000 in total. My mother glanced at the packages without offering to help, then called over her shoulder, "Thomas, Peggy's here," with the same tone she might announce that the mail had arrived. My father emerged from his study, reading glasses, perched on his nose, barely looking up from the medical journal in his hands. "Hello, Peggy. Good flight." Before I could answer, he had already turned back toward his study, adding, "Put your things in your old room. We've had to use it for storage, so it might be a bit cramped." I carried everything upstairs myself, discovering that a bit cramped meant boxes stacked almost to the ceiling, a thin layer of dust on every surface, and a twin bed that sagged in the middle. The room smelled musty, as if it had been closed for years. Contrasted with the immaculate condition of the rest of the house, the message was clear: my space wasn't worth maintaining. Curious, I walked down the hall to what had been Abby's room. The door was open, revealing a perfectly preserved shrine to her adolescence. Trophies still arranged on shelves, her college pennant hanging proudly, and fresh flowers on the dresser. I later learned this wasn't even where she would be staying. They had renovated the basement into a luxury guest suite for her family. I was arranging my gifts under the tree when I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen. Their voices drifted through the heating vent, a childhood eavesdropping technique I'd never outgrown. "She looks tired," my mother said, "and that haircut does nothing for her face shape." "Did she ever finish that graduate program?" my father asked. "I don't think so. Such a shame. All that potential, and what does she have to show for it? No husband, no children, living in an apartment across the country." My hands shook as I placed the last present, a custom photo book I'd made for the entire family. They didn't know, or had forgotten, that I had not only completed my MBA, but had graduated at the top of my class. They had been invited to the ceremony. They didn't come. The front door burst open with the sound of happy voices, and suddenly the house transformed. My mother's voice rose an octave, bubbling with genuine delight. "They're here? Oh, look at my beautiful grandchildren. Come to Grandma." Abby entered like visiting royalty, her husband James carrying their suitcases, their children Emma and Noah running ahead. She looked exactly as she always had. Perfect, highlighted hair, tasteful clothes, not a hint of the exhaustion that apparently showed on my face. Behind them came a stream of extended family. My father's brothers and their wives, my mother's sister and her family cousins, I barely recognized. "Abby, darling," my mother embraced her with genuine warmth. "You look absolutely radiant. That promotion has agreed with you." My father actually put down his journal, removing his glasses to give Abby a proper hug. "There's my girl, let me look at you. Beautiful as always." The contrast couldn't have been clearer. For me, critical assessment and dismissal. For Abby, unconditional admiration. I tried connecting with my niece and nephew whom I barely knew. 7-year-old Emma stared at me with suspicion. "Are you really my aunt? Mommy never talks about you?" 4-year-old Noah was more direct. "Why don't you come to our birthday parties? Grandma and Grandpa always come." "I live very far away," I explained, not adding that I was rarely invited to family gatherings. "Then why did you come now?" Emma asked. I had no answer that a 7-year-old would understand. As dinner preparations began, I offered to help in the kitchen. My mother assigned me to washing vegetables while she and Abby discussed the important elements of the meal. When I suggested a seasoning for the roast, a recipe I'd perfected in my own home, my mother smiled tightly. "We always do it this way, Peggy. The family expects tradition." Minutes later, when Abby suggested a different way to arrange the dinner rolls, my mother beamed. "What a lovely idea, so creative, just like you." By the time guests began arriving in earnest, the pattern had been firmly re-established. I was the afterthought, the extra, the one whose presence required explanation. "You remember my daughter Peggy, don't you? She lives in Seattle now," my mother would say, as if my geographic location was my only defining characteristic. Inside me, resentment warred with longing. Part of me wanted to leave to protect what remained of my self-worth. But another part, the little girl who still desperately wanted her parents' love, kept hoping that somehow tonight would be different, that somehow I would finally be seen. The dining room looked like something from a magazine spread. Crystal chandelier dimmed to a warm glow antique mahogany table, extended to its full-length grandmother's china and silver set out precisely. Candles flickered, casting soft shadows across the cranberry and gold table runner. A fire crackled in the adjacent living room, and Christmas music played softly from hidden speakers. Perfect like everything else in my parents' carefully curated life. As relatives circulated with pre-dinner drinks, I noticed my mother pulling my cousin Ashley aside, whispering something in her ear while glancing in my direction. Ashley nodded, then approached me with an overly bright smile. "Peggy, Mom wants a family photo before dinner. Can you come take it for us?" Before I could respond, she had already handed me her phone and was herding the others together. I obediently took several photos, making sure everyone was well framed. When I finished, Ashley's boyfriend reached for the phone. "Let me get one with you in it," he offered. "Oh, we have enough," my mother interrupted smoothly. "Let's not keep everyone from dinner." I watched as people began finding their seats, directed by my mother's subtle gestures and place cards. The main table accommodated 14 adults. I scanned for my name, moving around the table twice before my mother noticed. "Peggy, darling, we've put you at the children's table," she said, gesturing toward the kitchen. "We simply couldn't fit everyone at the main table." I stared at her, processing this information. The children's table. "Mom, I'm 32 years old." She patted my arm condescendingly. "It's just for dinner, dear. You'll be fine." I glanced around again, noting that Ashley's boyfriend of 3 months, whom she'd just met, had a place at the main table. So did my second cousin's new girlfriend, a woman I'd never seen before. Everyone had a seat at the adult table except me. "There seems to be room," I said quietly. "Couldn't we add one more chair?" My mother's smile tightened imperceptibly. "The seating has already been arranged, Peggy. Please don't make a scene." Making a scene. The ultimate sin in our family. More important than fairness, respect, or basic human dignity was keeping up appearances. So I swallowed my humiliation and walked to the children's table in the kitchen, where my niece and nephew sat with 3 other children, all under the age of 10. Emma looked up as I approached. "Aren't you a grown-up? Why are you sitting with us?" "There wasn't room at the other table," I explained, trying to keep my voice light. "That's silly," she declared with a child's straightforward logic. "When we have dinner at our house and there's not enough room, Daddy just gets another chair." From the perfect vantage point of the children's table, I could see everything happening in the dining room but participate in nothing. I watched as servers, hired for the evening, brought out course after course of my mother's famous Christmas dinner. Prime rib cooked to perfection, Duchess potatoes piped into elegant swirls, haricots, verts, bundled with bacon, homemade rolls still steaming when broken open. At our table, we received the same food but with plastic cups instead of crystal, everyday plates instead of china. The children quickly lost interest in me, chattering among themselves about Christmas presents and school friends. I ate mechanically, tasting nothing, watching the animated conversations happening 15 feet and a world away. After the main course, as dessert was being prepared, my father stood and tapped his glass with a spoon. The room quieted immediately. This was tradition. Dad's Christmas toast, usually a sentimental reflection on family and blessings. I set down my fork, curious despite myself. Another beautiful Christmas, he began, smiling around the table. Each year, I'm reminded how fortunate we are to have this family. Success in our careers, health, beautiful grandchildren. He paused, his gaze settling on Abby. And most of all, the joy of watching our daughter thrive. My breath caught. Surely he would acknowledge me now, perhaps with a belated daughter's correction. He raised his glass higher. To our only daughter, Abby, who makes us proud every day. The best mother, wife, and daughter any parent could ask for. You are our greatest achievement. The room erupted in cheers and glass clinking. My mother wiped a tear, reaching over to squeeze Abby's hand. Abby beamed, her face glowing with the warm light of belonging and approval that had never once shone on me. I felt as if I'd been struck. Our only daughter. Not a simple oversight or poor phrasing, but a complete erasure of my existence. In that moment, with family surrounding us, my father had publicly declared that I wasn't his daughter at all. My hands began to shake so badly that I knocked over my water glass. The children giggled as I mopped up the spill with my napkin, my movements mechanical, while my mind raced. No one from the main table even turned to look. Why would they? It was just background noise from the children's area. My throat constricted painfully as I struggled to breathe normally. The room seemed to spin slightly, Christmas lights blurring as tears threatened. In 32 years of disappointments, this moment crystallized everything. I wasn't just less loved or less valued. To them, I didn't exist at all. Through the fog of shock, I noticed my Aunt Martha looking at me, her expression uncomfortable. The only acknowledgement from anyone that something profoundly wrong had just occurred. Our eyes met briefly before she looked away, unwilling to challenge the moment but unable to ignore it entirely. I don't know exactly when the decision formed. Perhaps it had been building for decades, waiting for precisely this catalyst. But as dessert was served, chocolate Yule log with fresh whipped cream, something hardened within me. The familiar weight of invisible expectation, be good, be quiet, don't make a scene, suddenly felt intolerable. They had defined me my entire life. The afterthought. The less than. The not quite good enough. They had written my story without my consent. Tonight I would write my own. I stood up my chair, scraping loudly against the floor. The children fell silent, watching me with curious eyes. I picked up my water glass, now refilled, and turned toward the dining room. As I walked deliberately toward the main table, conversation gradually ceased, faces turning toward me with expressions ranging from confusion to annoyance. My mother's eyes widened in alarm. Peggy, is something wrong with the children? I smiled, a calm settling over me that I'd never felt before. The children are fine, I said, my voice steady and clear. I'd like to make a toast, too. The silence that fell over the dining room was absolute. My mother's face tightened in that familiar way that had always made me back down before. My father looked annoyed, glancing at his watch, as if calculating how long this interruption might last. Abby's expression was more complex, a mixture of embarrassment and genuine confusion. I remained standing, glass in hand, feeling strangely detached from the anxiety that would normally consume me in such a moment. Years of therapy had taught me to recognize when I was having an out-of-body experience, and this qualified. But unlike previous dissociative episodes, this one felt empowering. I could see everything with perfect clarity. I'd like to make a toast, I repeated, my voice stronger, to invisible daughters everywhere. My father cleared his throat. Peggy, we're in the middle of dinner. Perhaps this could wait until when, Dad? Until everyone leaves, until I go back to Seattle, until another decade passes. I took a deliberate sip from my water glass. No, I think this toast is 32 years overdue. I looked around the table, meeting the eyes of relatives who barely knew me despite shared blood. Most of you don't know me very well. That's not your fault. It's hard to know someone who's been systematically erased from family narratives. Peggy, my mother hissed, "This is inappropriate." Do you know what's inappropriate, Mom? Calling one daughter your only daughter while the other one sits 15 feet away? That's inappropriate. The room tensed collectively. My cousin Ashley stared at her plate. Uncle Robert shifted uncomfortably. Abby's husband James looked genuinely shocked, his eyes darting between me and my parents. You may not remember certain things, I continued, like how you missed my high school graduation because Abby had a minor cold, or how I spent 3 days in the hospital after my appendectomy and neither of you visited because you had tickets to the symphony, or how when I earned my MBA with honors, I mailed you the program because you said a cross-country trip was excessive for just a graduation. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. This is ridiculous. We've always supported both our daughters equally. The word caught me like a hook. Both I thought you just toasted your only daughter, Dad. You're twisting my words, he sputtered. It was just a figure of speech. A Freudian slip, perhaps, I suggested, but it's consistent with a lifetime of actions. I reached for my purse, which I'd brought with me from the children's table. I came prepared for this trip. Therapy has a way of making you face realities you've denied. I pulled out a small worn pink diary. This is from when I was 11. Let me read you an entry. My mother half rose from her chair. Peggy, that's enough. I ignored her, opening to a bookmarked page. The 15th of April. Mom and Dad went to Abby's recital today. They promised they would come to my science fair tomorrow, but Mrs. Peterson called about Abby maybe getting into honors orchestra. Mom says they need to take Abby shopping for a special outfit for the audition. They can't come to the fair now. I got first place. No one saw. I looked up. I have dozens of entries like this. I thought it was normal until my college roommate cried when I read her some of them. The silent discomfort around the table was palpable. Aunt Martha dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. My father stared stonily ahead while my mother's face had drained of color. I pulled a folded paper from the diary. I also brought this, our family Christmas card from 2009. I held it up for everyone to see. The photo showed my parents, Abby, and her then-fiancé, James, posed in front of a Christmas tree. I was edited out of this picture. I was standing right here, I pointed, but you had me cropped out because, as you said, Mom, the composition looks better this way. Abby finally spoke, her voice small. I didn't know they did that. Didn't you? I asked, not unkindly. You never questioned why I disappeared from family photos, from family stories, from family itself. I pulled a stack of folders from my bag and began handing them around the table. My Christmas gift to all of you. Documentation of my existence. Inside each folder were copies of my achievements. My college diploma, MBA, certificate promotion announcements, published marketing campaigns, and my recent award for a citywide Seattle campaign. Also included were photos of my Seattle life, my beautiful apartment overlooking the Sound, friends who valued me, places I'd traveled alone because I was never invited on family trips. I wanted you to have evidence that I existed and thrived despite not because of this family. I returned to my place at the children's table and picked up my coat and purse. This night will haunt you. Not because I'm making a scene, but because deep down you all know I'm telling the truth. You've participated in or witnessed my erasure for years and said nothing. My mother found her voice. Where do you think you're going? You can't just leave on Christmas. Watch me, I replied. I'm not staying another night in a house where I'm assigned to storage space while you maintain my sister's childhood bedroom like a museum. I'm not sitting at the children's table while strangers get seats of honor. I'm not pretending anymore. What about your gifts? My father asked, his tone, suggesting this practical concern somehow negated everything I'd said. Keep them, I said. Consider them payment for the therapy I'll need to process being called non-existent by my own father. I walked to the front door, stopping only to grab my suitcase from upstairs. As I descended the stairs, Uncle Frank stepped forward, his expression troubled. Peggy, don't leave like this. It's Christmas Eve. It's freezing outside. I have a hotel reservation, I said. I've been planning this exit since I accepted the invitation. Deep down, I knew exactly how this night would go. You always were dramatic, my mother called from the dining room. Just like when you were little doing anything for attention. I paused at the door. No, Mom. A dramatic person would have made scenes constantly. I never made them, not once in 32 years. I accepted every slight, every dismissal, every erasure. Tonight isn't drama, it's the quiet child finally finding her voice. I stepped out into the cold December night, the door closing firmly behind me. Snow had begun falling, soft flakes catching in my hair and on my eyelashes. For the first time since arriving in Lexington, I took a deep, full breath. My rental car started immediately. As I pulled away from my childhood home, tears finally spilled down my cheeks. Not tears of sadness, but of relief. In the rearview mirror, I could see silhouettes in the windows watching me leave. I drove away from Maple Avenue for what I knew would be the last time, crying and smiling simultaneously. I had never felt so terrible, or so free. The Holiday Inn Express lobby was decorated with a generic Christmas tree and tinsel garlands. The receptionist looked sympathetic when I checked in on Christmas Eve with red eyes and no luggage except a small suitcase. "Rough holiday?" she asked kindly. "Family," I replied, which was explanation enough. "Room 314, she said, handing me the key card. "There's complimentary hot chocolate in the breakfast area, and we have a Christmas movie marathon running in the lounge. Sometimes strange beds are better than family beds." In my room, I finally collapsed. The adrenaline that had carried me through my confrontation drained away, leaving me shaking. I curled up on the bed still in my carefully chosen Christmas outfit and allowed myself to really cry. Deep, body-racking sobs that felt like they came from my 11-year-old self, my 16-year-old self, my 22-year-old self. All the tears I had swallowed over decades poured out at once. When the storm finally passed, I felt empty but somehow lighter. I changed into pajamas, ordered room service, and deliberately turned off my phone. Whatever fallout was happening, it could happen without me for one night. Christmas morning arrived with sunlight reflecting off fresh snow. I slept later than I had in years, waking to the muffled sounds of families in neighboring rooms opening presents. For the first time in my adult life, I had nowhere to be on Christmas Day. The freedom was both terrifying and exhilarating. Around noon, fortified by hotel, coffee, and a sense of calm determination, I turned my phone back on. The flood was immediate: 27 missed calls, 43 text messages, and 15 voicemails. The notifications kept coming as my phone caught up with the backlog. I started with the texts, scrolling through them chronologically. From Mom, 9:45 p.m. Peggy, this behavior is unacceptable. Come back immediately. From Mom, 10:12 p.m. Your father is very upset. You've ruined everyone's Christmas. From Mom, 11:37 p.m. Where are you staying? At least let us know you're safe. From Abby, 10:02 p.m. What the hell was that? Mom and Dad are freaking out. From Abby, 10:30 p.m. Okay, so maybe you had some points, but did it have to be at Christmas dinner? From Abby, 11:45 p.m. James and I are talking. He's pretty upset with me. Says he never realized how you were treated. Call me. From Uncle Frank, 10:15 p.m. Proud of you, kiddo. Long overdue. Call if you need anything. From Aunt Martha, 10:22 p.m. Your mother is trying to convince everyone you're mentally unstable. No one's buying it. Where have you been all these years? We've missed you. From Cousin Ashley, 11:05 p.m. Holy shit, Peggy. Dinner turned into WWII after you left. Are you okay? That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. The voicemails told a more detailed story of the unfolding chaos. My mother's voice evolved from angry to pleading. Peggy, this is completely inappropriate. Come back and apologize to everyone and we can forget this happened. Then later, your father isn't feeling well. Dr. Michaels thinks it might be his heart. Is this what you wanted? To send your father to the hospital on Christmas? And finally, Peggy, please. Things got out of hand. We need to talk about this as a family. My father left only one message, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. Peggy, your mother is very upset. This isn't how we raised you to behave. Call us back. The most surprising voicemail came from James Abby's husband Peggy. "It's James. I just wanted to say, I had no idea things were this bad. I always wondered why you weren't around much, but Abby said you preferred your life in Seattle. We've been talking all night, really talking, I think. I think she's seeing things differently. Anyway, I respect what you did. It couldn't have been easy. Call when you can." The last voicemail was from Aunt Martha, time-stamped 3 a.m. "Peggy, it's your Aunt Martha. I'm so sorry, honey. I've known for years. Something wasn't right, but I never spoke up. After you left, all hell broke loose. Your mother tried to continue dinner like nothing happened, but Uncle Robert asked if what you said was true. When your father dismissed it, Robert mentioned how they missed your college graduation for Abby's job interview. Then Ashley started crying, saying she always wondered why she never got to know her cousin. Everything unraveled. Your parents are trying to paint you as unstable, but no one's accepting that version anymore. Old resentments are coming up. Apparently, we've all noticed things over the years, but never connected the dots. Your courage opened the floodgates. I just wanted you to know that you're not alone, and you never were. We just didn't know how to reach you through the wall your parents built." I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, stunned by the ripple effects of my actions. I hadn't expected allies. I hadn't expected my words to resonate with others or to expose deeper family dysfunctions. I had simply needed to speak my truth. Over the next few hours, more information trickled in through texts and social media. Christmas dinner had apparently devolved into multiple arguments after my departure. The carefully maintained family image had shattered completely. According to Cousin Ashley, my father had tried to dismiss my outburst as attention-seeking behavior, but Uncle Robert had challenged him directly. "I was at Peggy's high school graduation, Thomas. You and Diana weren't. You said you couldn't make it because Abby was sick, but Ashley and I saw her at the mall that same day." My mother had apparently burst into tears, claiming she was being attacked unfairly. When Aunt Martha gently suggested that perhaps there was some truth to my feelings of exclusion, my mother had accused her of always being jealous of my perfect family. That comment had opened decades-old wounds between the sisters. According to Ashley, dishes were still being cleared when 3 separate arguments erupted simultaneously. The most significant development came from Abby herself. Around 3 in the afternoon, she texted, "James and I had a huge fight last night. He says he's been uncomfortable with how Mom and Dad treat you for years, but I always made excuses. He showed me emails where he suggested inviting you to Emma's birthday, and I said you probably wouldn't want to come. I guess I've been part of the problem. I don't know what to do with that." I didn't respond to anyone that day. Instead, I treated myself to a movie at the theater across from the hotel, then dinner at the only open restaurant I could find, a Chinese place filled with other people avoiding family on Christmas. When the server brought my fortune cookie, I cracked it open to read. "Your silence speaks volumes when you've already said everything that matters." It felt like cosmic confirmation. The next morning, I checked out of the hotel and boarded my flight back to Seattle, still without responding to any messages. Sometimes silence is more powerful than any argument, and I had said everything I needed to say. 3 months after the Christmas dinner confrontation, spring arrived in Seattle with its characteristic mix of rain showers and tentative sunshine. Cherry blossoms softened the urban landscape, and the snow-capped Olympics were visible on clear days across the Sound. My apartment, 27 floors up in a downtown high-rise, caught both morning sunlight and spectacular sunsets. A sanctuary I had created for myself far from Lexington's suffocating perfection. That evening, my friends Julia and Marcus had organized an impromptu Tuesday dinner party at my place, a celebration of my promotion to executive creative director at the agency. They arrived bearing champagne gourmet takeout and a ridiculously elaborate cake with "Congratulations Badass" written in blue icing. To Peggy, Marcus toasted, raising his glass, who not only creates award-winning campaigns but finally created boundaries with toxic family members. The complete package, Julia laughed. And who's letting her fabulous friends throw her the celebration her family should have? We were halfway through dinner when my phone rang with a Massachusetts area code. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, but I had been expecting this particular call. "Excuse me," I told my friend, stepping onto my balcony. "I need to take this." The voice on the other end was professional calm. "Miss Sullivan, this is Mary Ann Jenkins from Preston Family Law. I've completed the review of the trust documents you sent. There are definitely irregularities in how your grandmother's estate was distributed. If you'd like to pursue this, I believe we have grounds to contest. Thank you, I replied. Email me the details and we can discuss next steps. After hanging up, I remained on the balcony looking out at the Seattle skyline. I wasn't pursuing legal action for the money, though the discovery that my grandmother had included me equally in her will before my parents had it amended was significant. I was doing it because truth matters even decades later. When I returned to the table, Julia studied my expression. Family stuff. Just tying up loose ends, I said, returning to my seat. Now where were we? The weeks following my return to Seattle had been transformative. With Dr. Sarah's guidance, I'd immersed myself in intensive therapy, working through the layers of family trauma that had shaped my self-perception for decades. The distance, both physical and emotional, provided clarity I'd never experienced before. My professional life flourished in direct proportion to my emotional healing. Freed from the constant need for parental validation, I threw myself into creative work that truly excited me. The promotion had been unanimous, my boss, citing my newfound confidence and visionary approach. Communications from my family continued to arrive in unpredictable waves. My father's messages evolved from angry defensiveness. Your behavior was inexcusable to cold formality. Your mother is still very upset to awkward attempts at normalizing. We've redecorated the guest room if you'd like to visit. My mother's approach was more psychologically complex. First came denial. I don't know why you would say such hurtful things, then bargaining. If there's something we've done wrong, we can discuss it calmly, followed by guilt tripping. Do you know your father's blood? Pressure is dangerously high because of the stress you've caused. I responded to each message with brief factual acknowledgments that neither engaged with their manipulation nor closed the door completely. Dr. Sarah called it the gray rock method, being as interesting as a gray rock to deprive manipulators of emotional reactions they could exploit. The most surprising communications came from extended family. Aunt Martha sent thoughtful emails sharing family stories I'd never heard, including several about my grandmother who had apparently asked about me often before her death. Your mother always made excuses for why you couldn't visit, she wrote. I should have pushed harder. Uncle Frank called occasionally, our conversations awkward but genuine. He had always been the family outsider himself, too loud, too informal for my parents' taste, and he understood my experience better than most. Several cousins connected with me on social media, commenting on photos and sending private messages that opened doors to relationships that had been foreclosed by family dynamics. Abby's communications were the most complex. After several lengthy emails dissecting our childhood from her perspective, she suggested a video call. When I declined, citing my need for space, she seemed to understand. Her messages became less frequent but more authentic. Sharing thoughts or memories without expectations, respecting the boundaries I'd established. Then, on a rainy Tuesday in March, my intercom buzzed unexpectedly. The building concierge announced, Miss Sullivan, there's an Abigail Patterson here to see you. Should I send her up? My heart raced. Did she say why she's here? Just that she's your sister and has come from Massachusetts to speak with you. After a moment's hesitation, I replied, I'll come down. In the lobby, Abby looked smaller, somehow less polished than usual in jeans, and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. When she saw me, her confident facade cracked slightly. You look amazing, she said. Executive Creative Director suits you. How did you know about the promotion, I asked. I've been following your company's website and LinkedIn. She hesitated. Is there somewhere we could talk? I know I should have called first, but I was afraid you'd say no. I probably would have, I admitted. There's a coffee shop across the street. We sat in a corner booth, Seattle rain drumming against the windows. After ordering, an uncomfortable silence stretched between us until Abby finally spoke. Mom and Dad are getting divorced, she said without preamble. The news stunned me. My parents' marriage had always seemed unbreakable, not necessarily because of love, but because of their mutual commitment to appearances. What happened? I asked. Everything, after Christmas. She stared into her coffee. Things were said that couldn't be unsaid. Dad admitted he's been unhappy for years, but stayed for the family image. Mom accused him of caring more about his hospital reputation than her. They started dredging up decades of resentments. She looked up. It's like you pulled a thread, and the entire sweater unraveled. I'm sorry, I said, surprising myself by meaning it. Don't be. It's not your fault. Abby took a deep breath. I've been doing a lot of therapy since Christmas, James insisted. At first, I was just going to prove to him that I wasn't part of the problem. That backfired spectacularly. I couldn't help smiling slightly. The thing is, she continued, I always knew you were treated differently. She struggled for words. You benefited from it, I supplied. She nodded. It was easier to accept their version, that you were difficult, that you pulled away, that you preferred your independence. Questioning it meant questioning everything, including my place as the favorite. So, why are you questioning it now? Because you forced me to see the truth. And because James threatened to leave if I didn't. She twisted her wedding ring. He said he couldn't stay married to someone who would let their sibling be erased. That night, after you left, he asked me how I would feel if our daughters treated each other the way I treated you. I couldn't answer him. We talked for hours, rain giving way to evening darkness. Abby shared revelations from her therapy, how our parents had subtly trained us both to accept our assigned roles, how her perfection was its own kind of prison, how she'd spent decades afraid of losing her favored position if she stepped out of line. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she said as we prepared to leave. I don't deserve it yet. I just wanted you to know I'm working on understanding my part in what happened to you. What are you hoping will happen between us? I asked directly. She considered this. I don't know. Maybe nothing right now. Maybe eventually a relationship that's honest instead of whatever we've had before. I'm staying in Seattle for a few days, but I don't expect you to make time for me. This visit was for me to say what I needed to say. As we stood on the sidewalk preparing to part ways, I made a decision that surprised even me. I have dinner plans tomorrow night, but I'm free for lunch if you want to continue this conversation. The smile that lit her face was perhaps the first genuine expression I'd seen from my sister in years. I'd like that. Walking back to my apartment, I realized something profound. My silence after Christmas had accomplished what decades of seeking approval never could. By refusing to participate in the family dynamic, I had forced a reckoning that was changing everything, not just for me, but for all of us. The truth once spoken couldn't be unheard. And in that truth lay the possibility of something I'd never dared hope for, a family based on authenticity rather than appearance, on reality rather than roles. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning. 1 year later, my apartment buzzed with conversation and laughter as I hosted my own Christmas gathering. Seattle's skyline twinkled through floor-to-ceiling windows, while a tastefully decorated tree stood in the corner. No perfectly matched ornaments or coordinated color scheme. My tree celebrated authenticity with mismatched decorations collected from travels and friends, each with a story behind it. More wine, Dr. Sarah, I offered, circulating among my guests. My therapist had become a friend over the past year, our professional relationship evolving as my healing progressed. Just a little, she smiled. I want to be clear-headed for the gift exchange. I put thought into these presents. Around the room, my chosen family mingled comfortably. Julia and Marcus debated basketball statistics with my colleague Damon. My neighbor Eliza taught her famous cookie recipe to 2 friends from my support group. In the corner, somewhat surprisingly, Abby chatted with my friend Taylor, both laughing genuinely at some shared joke. This gathering represented everything I'd built since last Christmas. Relationships based on mutual respect, connections forged through authenticity rather than obligation. The journey hadn't been easy, but standing in my home, surrounded by people who valued me for exactly who I was, felt like the most profound victory. Therapy had been the foundation of my healing process. Dr. Sarah and I had worked through layers of family trauma, unpacking how patterns established in childhood had shaped my adult relationships. Together, we identified my tendency to seek validation from emotionally unavailable people, my habit of making myself smaller to avoid conflict, and my deep-rooted belief that I wasn't worthy of attention. Family systems create roles for each member, she'd explained during one pivotal session. You were assigned the role of less than, not because you deserved it, but because the system needed someone in that role. Breaking free means not just rejecting the role, but rejecting the entire premise of the system. That insight changed everything. I stopped trying to earn my parents' approval and instead focused on building a life that made me proud regardless of their recognition. The support group Dr. Sarah recommended provided another critical layer of healing. Every Tuesday evening, I joined 8 others with similar family experiences, sharing stories in a space where everyone understood the particular pain of parental rejection. Watching others progress in their healing journeys gave me hope for my own, and being able to offer insights from my experience helped transform my pain into purpose. My relationship with my parents had settled into a careful, limited détente. After months of unanswered calls following Christmas, I'd finally established boundaries for communication. Emails only no more than once a month, no emotional manipulation or guilt tactics. Surprisingly, they complied. Perhaps understanding it was the only connection I was willing to offer. My mother's emails remained somewhat performative, carefully worded updates about community events or distant relatives, rarely venturing into emotional territory. My father's were briefer, but occasionally contained glimpses of the man behind the patriarch persona. In October, he'd written simply, "Saw your campaign for the Seattle Public Library. Impressive work. You always had a good mind for words." It wasn't an apology or acknowledgement of past wrongs, but it was perhaps the first time he'd seen me clearly as a professional in my own right. I accepted it for what it was, a small step in a marathon that might never reach the finish line. The legal challenge to my grandmother's will had been settled out of court. The financial outcome was less important than the principle. The truth had been acknowledged, documented, and addressed. I donated most of the settlement to a scholarship fund for first-generation college students, transforming what had been a symbol of exclusion into an opportunity for others. My relationship with Abby had evolved most dramatically. Our lunch, the day after her surprise visit, had stretched to dinner, then to several more meetings during her stay in Seattle. The conversations were sometimes painful, sometimes healing, always honest. When she returned to Massachusetts, we established a regular video call schedule, not from obligation, but from mutual desire to build something new. Unlike our parents, Abby proved capable of genuine reflection and change. She had continued therapy, examined her role in family dynamics, and made concrete efforts to understand my experience without defensiveness. 6 months after Christmas, she had visited again, this time, with her children, giving me the chance to build relationships with my niece and nephew, without the distorting lens of family mythology. They adore their Aunt Peggy now, she'd told me. Emma has your picture on her bulletin board and tells everyone she wants to work in ads like you when she grows up. The healing extended beyond family relationships. As I shed the weight of seeking parental approval, all my connections improved. I became more authentic in friendships, more confident professionally, and more open to romantic possibilities. 3 months ago, I'd met Daniel, a kind and thoughtful architect who appreciated my directness and had his own stories of family reconciliation. Our relationship was still new, but built on a foundation of mutual respect that would have been impossible for me before. As I looked around my apartment at the gathering I'd created, I realized that the most profound change was internal. The constant ache of unworthiness that had been my lifelong companion had finally subsided. In its place was a quiet confidence, a knowledge that my value wasn't determined by others' validation. "Time for a toast," I announced, raising my glass. My guests quieted, turning toward me with warm attention, the kind of genuine focus I'd craved my entire childhood. This past year has taught me that family isn't always defined by blood. Sometimes it's found in the people who see you clearly and love you anyway. I smiled at the faces around me. I've learned that speaking your truth, even when it's terrifying, is the only path to authentic connection. And most importantly, I've discovered that healing doesn't mean erasing the past. It means building a future that honors your journey while refusing to be limited by it. I raised my glass higher, to chosen family, to hard truths, and to the peace that comes from finally recognizing your own worth. Thank you all for being part of my journey. The room filled with here, and clinking glasses. As conversations resumed, Abby approached me quietly. "That was beautiful," she said, "and brave, like you." "I'm still working on believing that," I admitted. "Well, believe this," she said, handing me a small envelope. "Emma and Noah made this for you. They insisted I deliver it before Christmas. Inside was a hand-drawn card with "World's Best Aunt" written in glittery letters. Beneath the childish artwork, Emma had written, "Thank you for showing me that speaking up is important. Love you lots." Something about those simple words from a child who had never been taught to dismiss me broke through my last defenses. Tears welled in my eyes as I carefully tucked the card into my pocket. "They're learning what I wish we'd known growing up," Abby said softly. "That love shouldn't have to be earned and that everyone deserves to be seen." As the evening continued around us, I found myself reflecting on the extraordinary journey of the past year. From the children's table to hosting my own celebration, from silence to voice, from invisible to seen, each step had required courage I hadn't known I possessed until necessity demanded it. The path forward wasn't perfectly clear. Relationships with my parents would likely always be complicated. Old wounds might occasionally reopen. But for the first time, I wasn't defined by what I lacked, but by what I'd built. A life authentic to my values, surrounded by people who cherished rather than diminished me. The greatest gift of this Christmas wasn't under my tree. It was the knowledge that by standing up for myself that night at my parents' dinner table, I had not only changed my own story, but created ripples that allowed others to examine their own narratives. My voice, once silenced, had become a catalyst for truth. What about you? Have you ever had to stand up to family expectations or find the courage to speak your truth? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that their voice matters too. Remember, sometimes the family we create is more healing than the one we're born into. Thank you for being part of my journey today, and I wish you the courage to honor your own worth, especially during the holiday season.